Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be planting this Autumn Bonfire Encore Azalea. This is a beautiful red. This is one of the newest varieties of Encore Azaleas. Red flowers multiple times a year. I think it's going to look great in this terracotta pot here. This is in a 3-gallon size container. Currently, I'm going to plant it into about a 7-gallon equivalent container. It's got a hole in the bottom. That's very important that we're able to drain the water out of the bottom of the container. The only thing that's really different when we plant shrubs and trees in containers that's different than planting flowers in containers is we need the soil mix to be a little better drained. That they don't particularly like what we would call potting soils as much. Most things that are labeled potting soil have quite a bit of peat moss in them typically, or some sort of coconut core, and they tend to hold quite a bit of water, which is great for your flowers and your hanging baskets that you don't want to have to water so much, that use so much water during the summertime, but not necessarily great for your shrubs. And so I'll use a potting soil, but I'll amend it a little bit. And you can amend it with several things, really. You can use, this is a pine bark soil conditioner, which you may be able to get at one of the box stores or your garden center, and it's just a chunky pine bark. I use this for quite a few projects. It could be mixed in, maybe a third pine bark with this potting soil. The other option is to put some perlite in it, and this is perlite right here, just white material that's chunky. This is widely available. Most every garden center is going to have this. The potting soil has a little bit of it in there already, and I just want to up the amount, and that will create some additional drainage. In this case, I've got the pine bark, so that's what I'm going to use. But if you can't find the pine bark, perlite will work just fine. And basically, I kind of just go back and forth. Well, first thing I'll do is see how much soil I need to put in the bottom of my container before I pull my azalea out and put it in there. Ultimately, I want the top of my shrub about an inch below the inside lip of the container. And the reason for that is when I water, I definitely want a little bit of a reservoir so the water's not running over the top and down the side of my container each time. And so I will hold this up to the edge, see where it's about an inch below, and then I know I've got to come up maybe 4 inches, 5 inches on the bottom here. And I'll just go back and forth, maybe a couple handfuls of potting soil, and then one handful of the bark like that, and then just mix it in together. And this just makes a nice material that's still going to hold some water in place, so I'm not going to have to water constantly, but it's going to be just slightly chunkier. So just some slightly chunkier pieces in that right there. And I think that is all I need in the bottom of this container. I'll slide my azalea out of the pot. Same rules apply potting one into a pot as it does into the ground. We want to break these roots up just a little bit. This one is not root bound at all. Azaleas have super fibrous root systems. They tend not to wrap around the container all that much and just get out to the edge and become mats. So I'll break those mats up a little bit. And I can stick him in there, just dry fit him, make sure it's about an inch below the edge right there. And then I need to put a little bit more under there actually. So a little bit of each and mix it in again. And let's put them back in there. Okay. All right. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing, filling around the edge of it here. I may actually take a handful of bark onto my potting mix right here, to my potting soil, and just mix it right here in the top of the bag. I've got a 1-gallon container here, black plastic container, and frequently that's an easier thing to use to not make such a huge mess, as I can fill the container like this and then just easily pour it in here without making a giant mess. And again, you think you've got it full, and then you go around the edge and pack it down and realize that you have a long way to go yet. Okay, I like to leave a little bit of a dome in the middle of the container so that it would be real easy here to put this plant in there and then just have the soil coming up like this, like a little bowl. But then every time you water it, the water is going to go right to that crown of the plant, and I'd be worried that you may, in fact, end up rotting the crown of whatever plant that you're using. So I do the opposite. I leave the center of the where the azalea is going into the ground slightly higher, and I taper the soil out to the edge of the container, just like that. And that's pretty much it. It's got to be watered in really well. And I'm putting this in this container in the spring. Anytime you were container planting a shrub in the spring through early summer, you could fertilize it. This is an azalea, which is an acid-loving plant, and so you can use any fertilizer for acid-loving plants. I happen to have some hollytone. It's an organic fertilizer. You don't have to use an organic fertilizer, and sometimes, you know, if I was putting this container by my front door, the organic fertilizer may has a bit of a smell to it for a few days. So you may not want to use that, but you can use the hollytone. I tend to avoid liquids, and it's not any particular brand I avoid. I just don't like to do liquids on containers because it only lasts, you know, 10 days, 2 weeks, and I got to reapply it and reapply it. I just get a slow release fertilizer. If you're using, like I say, if it's an azalea going in a container, use something for acid-loving plants. Otherwise, just use a generic slow release fertilizer for shrubs and trees, whatever you want to use. Follow the instructions, put it on the top, water it in, and then you don't really have to do it again the rest of the year. So that's pretty much it in terms of monitoring the water on this. I'm going to water it in well today. Then I'm going to check it in a couple days. I'll put my finger down in the pot, maybe a couple inches. If it's still moist, I'll leave it alone, and then I'm going to have to find the pattern to how long it takes for this thing to dry out. I did not pot it up into a big giant pot. I think that's kind of important. If you take a shrub and take it from this 3-gallon pot into a 25-gallon pot, it's going to be super easy to overwater it. I'd rather take it from a 3 into a 7 and then into a 15 or 25-gallon size container. This is I think this is about a 14-inch container across the top. You know, from here I might go to a 20-inch wide container, and then I'll just reuse this terracotta pot after that. Thanks for watching this video.